Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Wendy Sachs, and I'm a member of the board of Plant Powered Metro New York. And welcome to our ongoing monthly series, Cooking with Chef Carole, presented by Plant Powered Metro New York. Plant Powered Metro New York empowers people to achieve better health and overcome chronic disease through a whole food, plant-based approach to nutrition. Together with a wide variety and network of grassroots leaders, organizers, and educators, we raise awareness about the dramatic health benefits of whole food, plant-based eating. We offer education and build supportive communities and empower people to make lifestyle adjustments and organize and lead projects that spark changes to food policy, food practice, and an ongoing change in our unhealthy American dramatic food culture. Anyway, welcome again to all of you who are tuning in today and to those watching the replay, and a special welcome today to the participants of one of our flagship jumpstarts. Plant Powered Metro New York does a 21-day jumpstart a few times a year that's open to the public, and it's really been one of our most successful ongoing projects. So welcome to the individuals who are participating in this quarter's Jumpstart. And congratulations, because you've taken the first steps towards improving and achieving optimal health. And all of us here on the Cooking Show wish you continued success on your journey. Also, while I'm on the topic, a quick flag that for the first time, Plant Powered Metro New York is going to be offering a Spanish-speaking jumpstart. So it's coming up very soon, and we're having an introductory call on Thursday, June 9th. So please go to our website. We'll put the information in the chat for more information, and please join us, or any Spanish-speaking people who you think might be interested in this particular jumpstart. Please share the news. And finally, it's June, and the farmers markets are bustling with all kinds of greens and fresh vegetables all over New York, and I imagine everywhere, I hope, in the country. And so we encourage you to buy organic and fresh ingredients when you do your cooking. And Carole will be showing us momentarily all kinds of delicious ways to put the food into delicious meals and dishes. So I will mention more of our upcoming events. There's a very special new series we're starting called Heart to Healthy Heart that I will mention towards the end, and a couple of other things, including farmers markets tours. So before I go any further and introduce Carole, please let us know where you're from in the chat. We are coming to you live from New York City and Taos, New Mexico. And please ask questions in the chat. Carole and I will usually allow about 10 minutes at the end, or sometimes we're able to answer questions during the demo, so we'll save a few minutes for that. And if you're enjoying the presentation, please like us on Facebook, on YouTube, and again, welcome. So some fun facts. We are cooking with beans today. Carole will go into detail, but many of you new to a plant-based eating will often get the question, well, what do you eat? So in Dr. Furman's book, 100 Best Foods, which we often reference on this particular program, please know that there are 4,000 varieties of beans, and they make up a vital part of a health-supporting diet, and they're very high in nutrients and in fiber, low in calories, and so they're also very good for weight loss and a weight loss tool. And I know we'll be cooking with cashews, and I never knew this. Fun fact, did you know that there's no such thing as a raw cashew, meaning by the time the layers of a cashew are toxic. So by the time we buy them on the shelves, they've actually been dried and steamed and shelled and peeled and grated and roasted on very low heat, but nonetheless delicious. Okay, that's it for fun facts and announcements. Carole, nice to see you.
Wendy, I love all those fun facts. I never knew that about cashews, and I think it's awesome because that's why they're so expensive, right? Yeah. But you don't we only need a little bit, and we're only having it as what our cashews are making a crema sauce today. Instead of using a sour cream or any other kind of dairy, we're going to make a cashew cream. So that's going to top our soup and could top our calabacitas. So we are making today what I'm calling New Mexican food. And it's not because I just live here. This is food that I have always loved. Latin food. It is in my own DNA. And my father was Guatemalan. I didn't ever know him, but he was Guatemalan. And it's something that I absolutely love. So we're going, and things that since I've moved here from New York, I have been eating a lot of calabacitas. It's a very common food here. It's often found in a burrito. Also, we're going to make pinto bean soup, which is going to be delicious. And I am going to make sure that we have enough time to learn how to make tortillas. Some of you might not even understand how to make them, but it's something that I get so much joy from that I just have to share it with you because it's a really fun thing to do. And certainly if you have kids, it's the perfect thing to do with any young people. So we will try to get to the tortillas at the very, very end. But we've got to get things cooking. And I love the book that Wendy showed. I have it too. I live with that. It's sitting right here on my counter. One fact that I want to talk about right before we start is that we are going to be cooking with something called Mexican oregano. And that is going to be in both of our dishes. And this particular one just came to me in my bean club from Rancho Gordo. And this is Mexican oregano. Now, you might be scratching your head and saying, what is Mexican oregano? I just know oregano. But it's very, very important that you understand the difference between the both. And if you were to put them side by side, you would actually notice that there is a difference in flavor. So if you're going to be cooking these dishes or any other kind of Latin dishes going forward, I really strongly suggest that you have both oreganos in your pantry. You want to have the regular oregano that we know as Mediterranean oregano, which usually comes from Greece or sometimes Italy or sometimes Turkish, right? It's Middle Eastern, right? That oregano. And that oregano is actually from the mint family. But what we're going to be using is an oregano that is from the verbena family. And many of you maybe have drank verbena tea, which is very lemony, has a very citrus taste. So our Mexican oregano has a lot of citrus flavor. Now, I know someone's going to say, what is a substitution? I don't have it, and I'm just going to use regular oregano. I actually still strongly suggest that you get your Mexican oregano. It's easily found. Or marjoram is another substitution. But again, I strongly suggest that you have both in your pantry. We are cooking with no oil, no salt, and no sugar today. That's what I teach, and we are going to learn how to do all these things. So the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to work on the pinto bean soup. And just let me get my recipes. I have them here. I always put them in a plastic 3-ring binder thing so that, and they stay clean, and when they get dirty I can just wipe them off. So this is how I have the recipe, and we are going to talk about first roasting. Now, I have ahead of time taken a sheet pan, and you want a sheet pan that has a rim on it, okay? Some of you might just have a flat sheet pan that has no rim. And I'm just saying that you want the kind that has a rim on it because often if your tomatoes are really juicy, sometimes they leak out, and you would want to not let that fall off your sheet pan while it's cooking to the bottom of the oven. So I have chosen 8 tomatoes. I picked Roma tomatoes because they looked the most robust and the reddest. We are not quite in tomato season yet, so I picked these, and I have 8 tomatoes here. 4 of them are going to be for our calabacitas, and 4 of them are going to be for our soup. Okay, and I had a half an onion, and I just want to show you. I hope all of you can see this. This is something that I do a lot, especially when I'm roasting any kind of tomatoes. I love putting several onions. Today I just had a half an onion in my fridge, and I just put it literally on the sheet pan. I did nothing. I preheated the oven to 425 degrees, and all of this cooked for about 30 to 35 minutes. And why do you want to bother doing this ahead of time? It's because you want to bring up the flavors. When you roast your vegetables, it seals in the juices and you get a much more pungent flavor. And when we're not using any kind of salt or oil, we need to look for other ways to bring in that strong flavor. So if you're lazy and you don't want to do the tomatoes roasted, then just don't. But I'm encouraging you to do this. And because we're making two, I did so many. And then this particular beautiful onion, I just want to show you, caramelizes without the oil. I know it's hard to believe. And it is literally like, I can never wait to just eat this onion. I could eat this whole onion. It's all cooked through. It tastes like candy. And we could use it in our soup today, but we're going to use a half a raw onion in our soup. So I'm just going to quickly gather these. One of the first things that we have to do for this soup is, in a blender, or I'm using a food processor, I am going to put in 4 tomatoes. So I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm just going to move this away, and we're going to use this later on for the calabacitas. So it's kind of cool to make both dishes at the same time, because then you can just roast. And nothing should stop you from roasting a tray of tomatoes. When they're in season, this is the yummiest thing ever. Okay, so we are going to, we have our tomatoes, and then we're also going to have 2 cloves of garlic. So I have, my cloves of garlic today are very small. So I actually have 4 little pieces, hoping that each one kind of makes, this is going to make 1 garlic clove, and this is going to make another garlic clove, even though they're 4 separate pieces. Okay, and what else is going to go in here, I have to just look so I don't forget anything, is we're going to add our half of an onion. Okay, so I have half an onion, which I have in this little kind of hugger. It's these cute little huggers that allows you not to be wrapping things in plastic all the time, and it just fits. And so that is in my hugger. And we just need to rough cut this. This onion is going to get all chopped up with the tomatoes. So I've just cut it in half and then into thirds, just rough cut, big pieces. You can see those are really big chunks. Okay, and the other thing that's going to go in here are, we're using 2 special kinds of peppers. And I want to show you what we're using so that you know what is happening here. Today, I'm showing you 2 peppers at the same time. One goes in the soup and one goes in the calabacitas. And maybe the one that goes in the calabacitas will just wait. But these are chipotle peppers in an adobo sauce. And they come in a tiny little 7-ounce can, okay? And I want to tell you that I'm not opening this can. Why? Because I have one in my cabinet, but I have had, you usually only need 1 or 2, and then you end up with like 6 or 7 left over. But mine have been in the refrigerator, in the pantry, refrigerator, in a jar for several months. Okay, so they don't really spoil, and I just, boy, the minute you open it, it's like smoky tasting, and oh my gosh. So here they are. They're in their own sauce. Okay, now they're not too hot, but they definitely have a flavor. So they're in their own, like, kind of smells like barbecue sauce, but it's an adobo sauce. And I'm gonna say that you need 2 of these. Okay, 2 peppers, and they all are different sizes. So you see, look at this one. Here's a teeny little one, and here's a really, really big one. So because I only have 1 teeny little one, I'm gonna try to pull out another teeny one, okay? And if you're someone that is very shy about, spices and strong flavors, maybe you just start with 1, okay? But I think the soup needs too, okay? Again, we're not gonna be using any salt, so this is gonna be helping our flavor come up. And then this is gonna go right back into the fridge, okay? And it will stay there, and you could make dressings from that. There's so many things that you can do with those peppers in adobo sauce. So now what we're going to do is we're going to blend this up. We have our tomatoes, our onions, our garlic, and our peppers. And I have the lid here, so we're just gonna come over. And you could do this in a blender as well. I find sometimes the Cuisinart in the food processor, because it's easier to open and clean, that I like doing it here. And I'm also, while I'm talking to you, gonna start preheating the pan while I'm doing that. So I'm just pulsing the machine, and that means that I'm kind of stopping and starting, stopping and starting. You could let it whisk, whisk, whisk. You do want it all blended, but I want a little bit of texture. So I'm not gonna let it whisk up too much. I'm looking for my onions to be perfectly chopped, which they are. I can see that already. I'm gonna just clean this edge here. Okay, and oh my God, does this already smell good? I mean, I haven't done anything, and this is what this looks like. And this would make just a great sauce. I mean, you could say I'm done from here. Like, this could be like over anything. It just smells divine. But we're going to do is we're going to start to actually cook it. And normally, if you were doing this, you know, in a very true, authentic Mexican way, you would saute it in a little bit of oil. But we're going to avoid that. I'm going to put a little water in the pan just to make sure that we're hot, because I do want this to start to cook immediately when it goes in the pan. And by flicking that water, what happens is I see that the water is dancing across the bottom, and it is immediately hot. So we are good to go to start to get this in the pan and start cooking. And I'll cook this for maybe 5 or 6 minutes just to get it going, seeing so that it's getting, you know, bubbly. In the meantime, let me just get all this out. I can see what's going to happen. I'm going to lose the blade in the pot of soup. And I have a nice soup pot here. Sometimes people ask me the brand of pot that is my favorite Dutch oven. And I'm going to tell you it's Le Creuset. Now, it's an expensive pan, but I've had my pan for like, I don't know, 30 years, more 30 plus years. So if you pay a couple $100 for a really good pan and you have it 30 years or your whole lifetime, then I think it's worth it. I know Lodge makes a really good pan. I have a new soup pan, a new pot, a new Dutch oven that's a Lodge. That's a much bigger pot for me, so I like using this one for soup. So this is starting to cook already, which is good. I can smell it and I love it. And then the next things that we're going to do is we're going to put our pinto beans and our stock right into a blender. And of course, I just put the blade right into this sink. Let me just give it a little rinse just in case I got it dirty. Okay. So the beans are going to go right into here. This is already cooking. Now, these are pinto beans that we're using. And I cooked mine in the house here. You could use canned beans, and I suggest that if you end up using canned beans, that you end up buying 2 cans, okay, if you buy the canned beans. And you do want to drain them, but I like always reserving the liquid, okay? So whether you make them yourself or you buy the canned beans, and I'm going to encourage you to buy the beans that are no salt, okay? No salt, because the emphasis here is if for some reason you feel that when the finished product is, you're ready to serve the soup and it needs a little bit of salt, then you can add a little bit of salt. But don't try to learn to bring home products that just have no sodium in them. Okay, so that is the best and healthiest for you. So, and they make plenty of beans with no salt, and sometimes they're on sale for like $1 a can. But I prefer to make my own, and here is a whole jar, which I soaked overnight last night, and I just put them on before I went to bed. And then this morning I covered them with water, and then I started to cook them as soon as I woke up. And they cook really fast, and you never want to eat a bean when it's al dente, okay? You eat pasta al dente, but you never eat a bean. You want it to be thoroughly, thoroughly cooked, okay? So what we need are 3 cups of these beans, and this is cooking like crazy already. And I'm just going to try to move some of this. I'm a little cramped here, and let me just... And I'm going to get 3 cups of beans, and I haven't drained them. I'm just loosely putting them in with some water. I mean, we could get a little colander here. I can do this right here in front of you, where we can drain this water right back in here and have 3 cups of beans. And again, we can use, in this recipe, I say to use stock, you know, to make your own stock. But you could also use this bean water. I never throw the bean water out. It's valuable, right? So let me just get a spoon, because I can see here that I'm doing things a little backwards. And it was uncomfortable. That's how I knew that I was doing things that weren't, that were backwards. And these are our beans. Oh my gosh, I could just, and I like making more than I need. Why? Because they can go on salads, and you'll see, and when we make the calabacitas, I'm going to show you that you could make calabacitas and just plain beans and roll them up in a tortilla later, or you can use the beans for something else. So I always make more beans than I ever need. And let's just get all this, some of this juice. We'll keep some of this for the soup. Okay, and we have these beans to put on the side, and we're gonna, so that's 3 cups of beans, and I have some liquid, and then it says we need 3 to 4 cups of stock. And what I have here is I have made my own stock, or sometimes you hear it called broth, okay? And I know that I get this question a lot, like, why don't you just buy your own? Well, 1, it's high in sodium. 2, it costs extra money. And if you're already cutting up your onions, your celery, your tomatoes, your mushrooms, those things can get collected. And I just collect them in a Ziploc bag in my freezer. And it can be for weeks, but I make stock quite often. But you can just collect all those ends. And the key things, again, are carrots. You want onions, you want celery. Sometimes you can put mushrooms in it. And if you're making a special stock, you can add other things, but you really want to stay away from the cruciferous vegetables going into your stock, like your kale stems or your Brussels sprout ends. Those you do not want to have in your stock. So I just want to show you that I have it here on the back of the stove. If you can see it, I don't know, I bring it forward here. This is a big pot, very heavy, and it's just full of carrots and onions and celery, and like I said, a few mushrooms. You could put some garlic in there if you like. And I just make my own stock all the time. And it's the way to use the outside or the ends and the tips of your carrots and your celery. And I just collect that stuff. So let's just roughly put in. It says that we need 3 to 4 cups. So I'm going to just put 2 right in here. We can always add. I don't want this to go all over the place. And if you were doing it in a blender, a tall blender, you'd be just fine. But there is reason for trouble here. If you overfill it, I could be in big trouble because it's not a big machine, and I can already see that it's already just leaking just a little bit. And I'm just going to get a paper towel here. I usually do this one in a blender, but I didn't want to get it out. Sometimes one is lazy. So let me get the lid, and we again have to be very careful because there's a lot of liquid in here. And so I'm going to only pulse it a few times. Okay, that's enough. That is enough. And this is going to go inside here, right here, just like that. okay? And I'm just gonna try to get a little bit of this cleaned up here because it's a mess. Okay, now normally you could have put the beans also within here and then eventually pureed it. I'm gonna show you how to use an immersion blender if you want, but it's up to you, but the beans just have to get pureed eventually, okay? That's the thing, and this has to cook now. Now it's a little bit chunky, it's not so pureed as I would like it. I would like it a little smoother. So this is gonna give me my chance actually to show you the immersion blender. You don't have to, you could have pureed it smoother if you were using the vertical blender. But let me just show you how this immersion blender works. And I know if you're starting off and you're brand new to the kitchen, right? You say, I don't have all these tools. Well, and how do I do all this? Well, you can try to do everything from one machine. You really can. So if you're on the low spectrum of not spending a lot of money, I suggest you get a NutriBullet. And we're going to use that when we make our crema. So I'll show you that. It's not a very expensive thing. And of course, you know, a lot of you know about the Vitamix, which is a very amazing tool, but also costs a lot of money. So if you're just starting your brand new kitchen and you say, I need to start collecting a few of these things so that I can make, I would start something on the lower end if you wanted with the NutriBullet. So this is an immersion blender, and what it allows you to do is it allows you to have a hot soup and puree something without taking it out of the pot and putting it into a container and then putting the container back into the soup pot. It allows you to just keep everything in here, which I love, okay? So I'm just gonna puree this. I like it a little smoother than I had it, okay? And the reason we didn't, in the Cuisinart when we were pureeing, I had so much liquid in there that it was gonna spill over. So I'm just pureeing this so that it's a little smoother. I like the beans to really break down. And you can do this, I am cooking the soup, believe it or not, here. And that's pretty much the soup. That's really it. There's no more to the soup than this. Of course, there is going to be the crema, which is pretty special. And let me just, and we're going to finish it off with some oregano, and we're going to put a little bit of fresh cracked bell pepper. So let me just move this immersion blender to over here and get the blender out. And of course, we'll taste it as well. So we're going to get some fresh black pepper. And the key, again, is the oregano, the Mexican oregano. And we're going to put a whole teaspoon of Mexico oregano in here. And, oh, do I love it. I have a brand new jar, which is a gift when you got to, I have these quarterly beans. I'm in a bean club from Rancho Gordo, and they always send a little teeny gift, a little spice. And this spice, this month, was Mexican oregano. And I was just like, how perfect is that? Do they really know that I'm doing a demo on Mexican food? They must have. So I'm just looking for a teaspoon. It's a little noisy over here. And I'm just going to get this out. And when you're dealing with like any kind of the spices that are dried like this, you want to put them in the palm of your hand. And then you want to just go like this. And that breaks them up. It makes the little leaves break down and the aroma starts to come out, okay? So a teaspoon of that should be enough. I don't think you're going to need any more. And then we will want to put some lime juice in it, of course, at the very, very end. This is boiling like crazy. It's done. The soup is pretty done. I'm just going to give it a little taste and see if we can put the lime juice in it right now. I wish it wasn't boiling so hard. It's already delicious. It doesn't even need the lime juice because it's got a hint of that adobe. The onion is far forward. It's so delicious. I wish that you all could just come here. I'm going to put like a big tablespoon here. So I'd wash the spoon. I'm just going to finish it off with a little bit of lime juice. Not too much. I'm not sure why limes. Limes used to be so inexpensive. You used to be able to get like 10 for $1, and suddenly you buy 2 for $1. I don't understand. So I'm back. I was starting to use limes even more than lemons, and now I don't understand, like, what has happened to the limes? Why are they so expensive? So I'm going to take that away. We're going to move that to the back of the burner. Let me just get another oven mitt here. And the soup can cook on really, really low heat. It's actually ready to go, to tell you the truth. But I'm going to put it on a very, very low heat and let it just simmer. It's just going to simmer. And we're going to move on to our very next thing. Wendy, it's always a good time now when we're in between things to ask questions.
Thanks, Carol. Love when you give us a break to pipe in. Yeah, there is a question. So the chipotle peppers in the can that you recommended have a smidgen of, it looks like a smidgen, it's the 5th ingredient. They have corn oil.
They do.
Are you aware of any canned chipotle peppers that do not use any oil?
I'm not aware. I actually looked on Amazon and I looked at dozens of cans, dozens of cans. And there are organic ones. I don't often see organic chipotle peppers. I don't, but on Amazon there were organic ones. You know, I got these at our local Mexican store, and I feel that it is so minimal. It is so minimal. They are sitting in their sauce and we pull the peppers out, you know? So I guess I don't worry about it. Just like it's a condiment that I just use a little bit of, and I guess I overlook it. But it's a good question, and one could do the research. I literally put chipotle peppers in Amazon, and 20 kind will come up. And there are organic ones. When we make our calabacitas, and we're using the diced green chilies, these are very easily found, and they're organic. They are very common. I used to buy them in New York too. This brand is called Rio Luna, and they are easily available. But the chipotle in adobo, I don't know.
And what happens if you were to use fresh peppers instead of, like, if you're really adamant about no oil, could you substitute?
You could, yeah. You know, like peppers? I have, you know, sitting on my counter for literally since last summer are the few peppers that I grew. I refuse to use them. I don't know why. I should put them in, do I want to display them? I just literally have these. So these were what kind of peppers? I don't even remember. Maybe they were guajillo. Anyway, you could take dried chilies for sure. And get a package of guajillo chilies or any kind of dried chilies, and then you want to boil them in water, right? You want to boil them in water, and to reconstitute them, don't throw out that water because it's going to be spicy. Also, you want to always take off their little stems and shake them because there are lots of seeds inside. And then you could just puree that, and I think that would be a very, very good substitution. And maybe you would want to add a teeny bit of vinegar to flavor this with, and I think that would be a good, and a little bit of tomato paste would probably be a really great substitution if you want to go that extra mile.
Great. I'm just putting that in the chat.
I'm sorry that's complicated, but it's a hard thing. You know?
Yeah, no, I understand. There's some people who, as you well know, who've suffered a heart attack, and particularly if they're following, and you know this as well, Dr. Esselstyn's recommendation, it's 100% no oil. By the way, not 100% no fat, so you can have a minimal of nuts. But for our situation, yes, Dr. Esselstyn is absolutely no oil. And so, Ellie, I've just put this in the chat, what Carole's recommending if you want to use.
And I would do it just like I said. You get your dried chilies. If I have a minute at the end, I can take out of my pantry. I have 3 or 4 different kinds of dried chilies. But you'll just, like I said, get the dried ones, shake out the seeds, reconstitute them in your boiling water. okay? And then don't throw that water out. Then put a little bit of tomato paste, right? And a little bit of vinegar, and you'll have almost the same replica.
Beautiful. That's it. That's it on questions. We're
That's
ready
it.
to rock and roll.
Well, that was a good question, and I totally get it because, you know, I have Dr. Esselstyn on my mind for the last few days. So I'm very well aware about his real strict. Like I said, there are condiments that I sometimes use that I just say it's so little that it's really, for me, it's okay. So we're going to move on to making the calabacitas. Our soup is just lightly cooking in the back, which is really great. Okay, and what is calabacitas is what someone might say. And I'm going to tell you that I have had it so many times here in New Mexico, and it's very common found in a burrito and or served with eggs or served with just as a stew. And I would go to a friend's house here, and he would always have a pot of it. And I fell in love with it. And I just said, okay, I'm going to learn how to make this because it seems like the perfect summer dish. And we're a little bit ahead of having all the best at the height of corn, zucchini, tomatoes. We're just in June, right? And a lot of that starts to come out late July and August. But I thought I would empower you now because you can have access to all these things still right now. But as the farmer's market, you start to see all those local zucchinis and squashes. Now, what is the word? Calabacitas is actually a Spanish word for the word zucchini or squash, right? And sometimes you hear the word courgette, which is the French word for zucchini, right? So we're making something with corn, and we're going to use a can of diced green chilies. Now, here in New Mexico, as the summer progresses, we have very famously known for hatch chilies, which are freshly roasted. At every store you go to, they'll be actually roasting fresh chilies. And people buy cases of them, and then they peel them and they store them in the freezer. I have none of those, so I've resorted to a small can of green chilies. But if you can get the fresh ones, that is the most awesome. And you can just chop them up and roast them in your oven. And again, I'm just showing you a shortcut. But if someone really wants to know how to do their own, I will happily tell you because it's super easy. But what I've saved time for in this demo today is to show you how to cut your zucchini. Now, sometimes you see calabacitas and the zucchini is just sliced into thin rounds. But more commonly, you want all the vegetables to be evenly the same size. If any of you are familiar with a salad called Israeli salad, where you dice up and cucumbers and tomatoes and you finely chop parsley, there's a certain look to that salad and it has a certain texture to it, okay? So that is very similar here where you want everything to be of the same size. So I'm gonna give us a few minutes to learn how do we do this, okay? So I have this pan heating and we're gonna get, I did a small, I recommend a small onion, I think that's what I say. Yeah, one small onion, finely diced. Okay, so this onion is very finely diced, almost as small as the corn and almost as small as the zucchini, okay? And I'm going to show you how to do the zucchini. But the key here is we want to start sauteing the onions so they get brown and they start to caramelize. And we're going to get a little bit, we have some broth, right? And I'm just going to pour a little bit in. And it's sizzling and steaming. I don't know if you can see that right away. We're going to keep that very close by. And we're going to put our onions in. Okay? And I'm going to get my spoon here. And those onions are going to start to cook. And if you're someone that has just never cooked with no oil, it is hard for you to believe that these onions are going to caramelize and brown perfectly with no oil. But you have to be patient, and it's going to be about maybe 5 to 7 minutes depending on your heat source. So you want to listen and you hear things cooking. Now, the onions are not swimming in any kind of broth. If you don't have broth, you can absolutely use water to saute your onions. But you're going to want to stay close by, because what's going to happen is that water evaporates and disappears, and the onions are going to still be cooking, but possibly they're going to stick to your pan. So you want to keep adding a little bit of broth as you go, okay? But not ever drowning them. Now, let's get to the important part, which is dicing a zucchini, okay? Or
Carole?
doing any, yes.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt just a second. Can you lower the cilantro, because we can't quite see the pan? Just,
How's
yeah,
that?
beautiful. We got it. All right, we can see what you're doing.
Here's the pan too, just so
Yeah.
you see.
Beautiful. It was just lower than the other one, so this way we can see what you're doing.
The cilantro is crazily big today.
see.
It's like when I bought it, it's like I got 2 bunches in one. I was just like, wow, this is the most cilantro for this. Literally when I pick it up, I will show you. It's like 2 bunches in one.
Yeah,
okay, so let's do the zucchini, and it's important for me to show you this. So when you're trying to small dice something, you have to square off the vegetable. Even when you're trying to make matchsticks, you want to square off your vegetable. So I'm going to cut off both ends, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off a sliver on each side. Okay, I'm going to take my French knife, and I'm just going to take a very small sliver. Do you see that sliver? Okay, and I don't waste any of that. You might ask me, what is she going to do with those slivers? Well, sometimes this could just be cut up and put into anything, right? But these days I used to put some things like that into my compost bin, but these days I have a little puppy, and I've been trying to feed her vegetables. And so between the vegetables that I eat and then the compost, there's a center part now that belongs to the puppy. So what I will do eventually is I will cut all these zucchinis up with other ends of like mushrooms, and I will just pulse it in a Cuisinart, chop it all up, cook it a few minutes, and that will be it added to the puppy food. So I feel like she's getting her vegetables. So you can see we have like a square here, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to now, that's basically we've taken a round vegetable and we made it square. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to cut 1/4 inch slices. Okay, and again, depending on your zucchini, I can't tell you how big the diameter is. I'm going to get 4 1/4 inch pieces. You see, I'm just going to show you like a fan of cards. Okay, see they're 1/4 inch. Okay, and then you can stack them, and until you're comfortable, I would just take 2. Okay, and then you're going to make 1/4 inch long strips now, right? Okay, and you're going to try to keep everything all together. I have 2 layers here, and I'm going to make another layer of 1/4 inch. Okay, and this is a good technique. This is good to know, especially this is how you would cut matchsticks too. Like if you had jicama, it's one of my favorite snacks, and jicama would go perfect with this meal as well. You make matchsticks, and the jicama is round, so you want to make it into a square and then cut sticks. You see? So now what I'm going to do is going to hold my knife, and I'm going to claw my hand back, right? And I'm going to slowly move my hand back a 1/4 inch, and this knife is resting along the center of my index finger, right? And I'm just cutting, and I'm getting tiny little 1/4 inch pieces, okay? Does everyone understand how to do that? And the knife is, if you do not have knife skills, right? You're brand new in the kitchen, and you say, I'm really scared. I can just promise you that it gets better. You have to practice, okay? The only way to learn is to practice. Okay, you can't have somebody else cutting for you. Now, sometimes you can go to the store and buy a lot of things that are already cut for you. I don't think you're going to find small diced zucchini cut, but you could find spiralized zucchini in your freezer or in your produce section, right? So there are lots of things that are prepared for you. Garlics, chopped garlic, but better to learn how to cut. Okay, so those are our very beautiful zucchinis, and hopefully everyone could see that. And I'm just gonna pile this on the plate, and I'm gonna just take away all these ends. You see, these are just the ends. They are not going into the garbage. They are going to get used up. And if you don't have a usage for them, as in an animal getting them, then you know what? You could just cut them thin, and you could make your own handmade spaghetti, actually, right? Look I'm just going to show you, because I'm so tempted to eat it myself, you know. And here you could just cook this, and you have spaghetti, right? And then you could put calabacitas on, you could put something on top of that, okay? So there's so many things you can do. The next thing I want to do is we want to stir these onions. I'm listening to them, and they're cooking, and they're not browning yet because I don't have them on a high enough heat. So I'm going to turn up the heat a little bit and get them brown. And we're going to now cut the jalapeno. Now, it is your choice how much jalapeno you want to put in here. This is kind of a normal size. Sometimes they're smaller, sometimes they're bigger. And you want to be very, very careful, because the seeds inside any kind of hot pepper, whether it's serrano or Scotch bonnet, they're very, very hot. So if you are worried about touching your eyes, touching your lips, and you have that hotness on your finger, then put on some rubber gloves, okay? That's one suggestion. If you don't happen to have rubber gloves, then put your hand in a Ziploc bag or in a plastic bag. But right now I'm gonna tackle this on my own, just bravely, and I'm rotating it, and I'm just literally slicing off. And look at here, I have I have everything off, and I have the center, and here are the seeds, right? Okay, so I'm gonna not touch those. I'm gonna do a very good job at not touching those. And then I just wanna slice these pieces into really thin julienne pieces. And I do have a few seeds on the counter, on the cutting board here. It's okay for me. I'm gonna use this whole jalapeno. Now, as I say, if you're worried about having something that is too spicy, then cut back. It is much better for you to use half the amount of jalapeno and then add it later, okay? If you're kind of a scaredy person that says, oh, I'm not a person that eats anything spicy, then use half, use quarter, and then add the rest later, okay? But I am a spicy person. I know that. And anybody that I serve to, I always tell them this is spicy, right? And it's not going to be like killer spicy. I'm not going to be crying or anything, but it's going to be very flavorful, okay? And I always like just giving it, and this is now very small diced. Okay, and the onions are sizzling, and they're starting to get brown. Now what I want to do for 1 minute is just stir the soup. And it's looking really good. You could use a teeny bit more broth, actually. So I'm going to come back here. I'm actually going to get rid of this pinto bean broth, but why save that when it could just go into the soup? And I think it was the perfect amount. So that's just going to get stirred around here. And that is really looking good. Okay, that's just going to stay at its low heat. And I'm listening to the onions because they're starting to release their caramel. You can't see, but oh my gosh, are they already smelling good. They're starting to get brown. I'm going to put in a little more of the juice, of the broth, right? That keeps them moving, okay? So that they're not sticking, okay? And I really do want to get those brown. So we're going to talk about the other things that we're going to add. We're going to add garlic. I have here 4 cloves of garlic. We're going to get that added right now while the onions are cooking. Okay, we're going to get rid of that. And then we're going to get our jalapeno in. And as I said, we're going to use the whole jalapeno. And that too can start to go in now and start to cook. But don't forget just what I said to you. If you don't want to use the whole one, use a half. Use a quarter. Okay? Better to add more later. Okay, so this is what this is looking like. You can see nothing is sticking. The onions are really starting to become light brown. They're not the golden brown that I'm looking for, but we just need to be patient. I have it kind of on a medium heat. You know, I love cooking on gas, but this is an electric burner, so you kind of have to learn. Okay, so that is smelling divine. And what else is going to go in here? We are going to put our 1 teaspoon of Mexican oregano, right? The same amount that we put right into our, we're going to get that ready. We're not going to put that in quite yet. And we're also going to put in some cumin, which I swore I took out. And we're going to put a half a teaspoon of cumin in. We'll get that ready. I'm going to put that in once all the vegetables are in. And we do have to get our tomatoes. So now I just want to show you that this is starting a little bit. It's still moving around, but it's going to start to stick. So this is when I add just a little more broth. Just a little, and that broth has a way of just loosening everything up. And I have to say, it's magic. It is amazing, amazing. You know, you don't need oil. You just don't need it. And it's cooking away and browning. And it looks beautiful. I want to get my tomatoes, which are here close by. I'm just going to grab them off of our sheet pan, right? Remember, I roasted a bunch of them, some for the soup, some for this. And I'm just going to small dice these now. And all the juices are going to start to leak out. So my cutting board hopefully won't become too much of a mess. Now, when I'm small dicing these, they are starting to break apart. So you're not going to end up with nice little cubies because the vegetable is already cooked. But the tomato is basically there to bind everything, right? So the tomato is not as important to small dice it, but I am making it small cuts. I'm just getting it all here. And this is my favorite thing. I could just eat a plate of tomatoes. At the end of the summer, I just cook a sheet pans full of tomatoes, and then I store them for the winter, now that I'm growing my own tomatoes. So, okay, this is definitely browning. I just want you to see that it's browning. It's getting crispy even. Again, I'm just going to put a little more broth. Okay. That looks fantastic. The tomatoes are going to go in. Everything's going to go in, and it's just going to come together in a very few minutes. And we're going to have just enough time for me to show you the crema, and hopefully time to show the tortillas, because the tortillas are so much fun. Okay, so here we go. We are going to we're going to move this. We're going to put in our zucchinis. They're going in. Our tomatoes are going to go in. Let's get those in. Let's move these spices that I already measured out. The tomatoes are going to go in. Let's get a knife and not lose any of those juices. Okay? Delicious. And the corn could go in almost now too. Everything can pretty much go in. I'm going to put the oregano. We're rubbing it between our palm of our hands, just like we did earlier. We're going to put the ground cumin in. And I realize I have only a 1/4 teaspoon, and I need a 1/2 teaspoon. So we're going to do 2 quarters, makes a half. Okay? And we're going to move things out of our way, out of our way, out of our way. And we can actually let me tell you about the corn. As soon as the corn starts to come fresh, you want to take it off the cob, right? And I did actually a demo last August, a little bite-sized demo on how to take corn off, and you could find that on our YouTube channel under bite-sized demo. It was last August, I know that I did that. This is just frozen organic corn, and that's going in there now too. This is 2 cups, okay? It's, yeah, that's what's happening. And then we're gonna give this a really good mix, okay? The pan is really full. It's really full, but once that zucchini start to really cook down, right? And this is now just going to cook for maybe 15 minutes, right? And then you're going to taste it for any kinds of seasonings. And you could put a little bit of broth if you want, just to get it cooking. So it's kind of like a thick stew, right? With zucchinis, and it's really, really colorful. Can everyone see how colorful it is, right? And we will taste it, but we want it to cook for a number of minutes so we get everything, all those flavors melding. And then one other thing that we haven't added is our little diced green chilies. This is a 4-ounce can. The same brand comes in a 7-ounce can. You could use 7 ounces. I think the more chilies, the better, actually, the better. And again, if you don't want to use a canned chilies, then you could just roast your own pasilla chilies if you want, or Anaheim chilies. Here in New Mexico, we have something called hatch chilies, which will come out in July. So all of that looks amazing. Oh my gosh, this I will eat all week long, but in a million different forms. So let's just get everything cleaned up so we have room to start showing you other things. And I'm just going to move everything away. Move that away. And of course, we have to clean our cutting board. And the next thing up is our crema. Wendy, while I'm washing up a little bit, any questions on the calabacitas?
Yes. The calabacitas, is that used as a side dish? So would you serve the soup plus the calabacitas? Or
yes, I'm going to show you how to present it when we get to the very end. Right. But today we're going to have soup and we're going to have that as a side dish. Right. But when, like, I run out of soup so fast, this is not, this recipe, soup recipe, is not like a full, like, to the top of the pot soup. So last week I seem to have made the soup, and within 2 or 3 days it was gone, and I had still a lot of calabacitas. So I was really clever with them, and I put sweet potatoes, and then I ate the vegetables on top of that. Or like I said, very common to roll up the calabacitas in a tortilla, a big flour tortilla if you're interested. There are so many ways to eat the remaining calabacitas. You just have to use your imagination. I also made a big pot of brown rice today, and we can serve it with brown rice as just a meal in itself.
Would you ever puree the calabacitas into like a delicious corn soup?
You don't even have to puree it. So that's an idea to puree it, but to tell you the truth, I would just put all of it into a big pot and put in a bunch of broth, and you would have a great soup.
Yeah, yummy.
You don't even have to puree it. There would be no reason to puree it because everything is perfectly uniformed and beautiful, and it would make a great soup. And the only thing you might want to do to make it a better soup is to add a few more tomatoes, to make it a little more tomatoey than what it is right now. But a great, great soup.
It looks delicious and so colorful. We're ready for you, Carole.
It's so colorful and honestly so delicious and takes no time. You have to remember the time that it's taken me. I've spent time showing you how to make small dice. But really, once the zucchini's cut and you've got the corn, you've got it comes together in a minute, maybe 5 minutes. Not a minute, but 5 minutes. So we must move on because we're having extra special things to go on our soup. And of course, I want to show you the tortillas. So we are going to just get that done. So what are we going to do here? I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. We're going to bring over the NutriBullet, which is really, I don't know, the most versatile blender I have. Why? Because it's just small and simple, and if I have to go away, I can really put it in my bag and just put it in a car. I mean, it's just great. And it comes with different size cups, and I recently got a small cup, which I love for dressings. So what are we going to do to make this crema? Well, what we have to be careful right now is to not burn the cord. That I would be devastated if it was on the burner. Okay, so we're keeping the cord away as best as possible. Now, what I've done for the crema, normally when we make any kind of sour cream or any kind of cream We use cashews, and often you'll use a little bit of lemon juice as a way of souring and making it taste sour. But today, because we're making Mexican food, I'm actually using lime juice instead of the lemon. So I like making teeny little batches of this because I don't need a lot of it. So I soaked a half a cup of cashews overnight. The longer you soak them, the creamier you're going to have things. Now, you could say, oh, I forgot to do it and I'm in a rush. Okay, if you're in a rush, then boil your water and soak your cashews in the boiling water and give it at least an hour, right? And then you'll be fine. But the longer you want them soaked, and you want to drain this water. Okay, so I'm getting rid of this water. And it's going to go, and the drained and the cashews are just going to go in here. Now we need the lemon juice, and I say, what do I tell you? I say about 1 lime. So these limes these days are, I told you, expensive, 2 for $1, and they're tiny. So I'm going to say that you're going to probably get 2 tablespoons out of it, is what I'm guessing. So I have a big thing here of 2 tablespoons. So I'm just going to say 1 whole lime, okay? And then we're going to, I'm not squeezing that. We could use that for something else. And then we want to have equal amounts of water to nuts. So, or how do I, no, 1 cup of water. Now I always start with a little bit of less water, okay? Just like the jalapeno. If you don't like hotness, you start with less. I always start with less water because sometimes I buy the cashews that are all crumbs in pieces, and these are whole cashews. So you can always add more water. Okay, that's what I'm telling you. I like doing a little bit at a time. Okay, so we're supposed to have a cup, and I've done 3/4. So this gets upside down, this gets blended, and we'll. So that looks really good, even right now. Let's just check it out, okay? And see what the story is. So it looks a little bit runny, not too thick, okay? I'm actually gonna pour it in this cup that we have the cashews in. So, and let me get a nice spatula. And let's look at how runny. So for me right now, that is like a dressing, right? You could make it thicker by using less water. Make it thinner by using more water. Okay, we just use 3/4 cup. In the recipe, I said a cup. But I'm just going to get this out of here, and it's just going to be here like that. We'll just have that sitting, and I'm sure that it's delicious. There's almost no reason even to taste it because I put a lot of lime juice in it, and it's cashews. And but we can taste it. It's so yummy. It's like cream, right? So that's just gonna sit there, and we're done with this. And we're gonna unplug this and move it out of here, just so it don't want that cord burning. Well, while we're back here, we're gonna stir the soup, and we're gonna take it off the heat. And the soup looks fantastic. Okay, so that is done. So we have minutes now, and I really want to show you the tortillas. But while we're here, I just want to stir this. This is cooking, and it's looking fantastic. And you really want it to be all kind of come together. It kind of, you can see how it becomes very stew-like. And it's all the tomatoes are breaking down as we're mixing. And delish. Delicious. Delicious. I'm just going to show you what that's looking like. It really hasn't changed in its look, but everything's just kind of breaking down. The zucchinis are getting cooked. And honestly, you don't ever want to overcook vegetables, but this is a dish actually that I think very much. I'm putting just a little broth in it, just a little bit. I'm just gonna let this simmer while we're making our tortillas. So that's simmering. Tortillas. As I said, there is a lot of different kinds of tortillas. The most classic is a yellow tortilla. I like making yellow and blue ones at the same time, but today we're just going to make using the yellow masa harina. Most of you can buy masa harina at any, even Trader Joe's has masa harina. Whole Foods has it. Your local grocery store will have masa harina. I think one of the better kinds that is easily accessible is the Bob's Red Mill. But I gave Wendy a link for this other kind of masa harina that I like, that I order a lot of from Amazon, and it's called Gold Coast. And they actually make an organic, a really nice corn masa. So I order that on Amazon, and I buy their gold as yellow corn, and I also buy their blue. So this is a recipe. So the normal masa harina recipe, just straight up, is always 2 cups of flour, 2 cups of masa harina, 1.5 cups of hot water, and often the recipe will say you need 1/4 or 1/2 teaspoon of salt, but we're not going to use any salt, and you don't need any salt. So I always just omit the salt. Now, there is a woman who has a wonderful blog. It's called 101 Cookbooks. Her name is Heidi Swenson, and she has variations of like 5 different flavorful tortillas, which I have been making for, I don't know, at least the last 10 years. I love it. And what are the additions? So we're going to make those, and I'm going to show you right now. And we're going to do a very simple one. And she puts additions in it, like a dried porcini powder, or she puts in black and white sesame seeds. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to make just a small batch of tortillas. We're going to do 1 cup of masa harina, okay? And then we're going to actually add 2 very powerful ingredients. We're going to add 1 tablespoon of hemp seeds, okay? Whoever thought of putting hemp seeds into your into your tortillas? And hemp is like really good for you. It's high in fiber. It's actually improves your brain, and it actually, I learned recently that it has even more protein than flax seeds or chia seeds. So using the hemp is actually very good, an additional to making this a nutrient dense tortilla. And then, of course, we're going to put in turmeric. I'm going to have 1/2 teaspoon here of turmeric, okay? So what do I have here? I have 1 cup of masa harina, 1 tablespoon of hemp seed, and then 1/2 teaspoon of turmeric. Now, no matter what, you always want to have hot water. So I'm going to get the hot water going. Now, also something that she recommends that make it a little more decadent, and you don't have to, but I've been soaking a few saffron threads, okay? So that too is going in here. Now, saffron is something that you don't have to add. There's plenty of times I make these tortillas with just the hemp and the turmeric and not the saffron, but it's nice to do that. It's her addition, not mine. And we're going to have our 3. Now, that in order to enliven this saffron threads, you always have to soak them in a little water. So I'm very conscious of having some water already in there. So we're not going to add all this hot water. And I'm going to pour it over this plate so I get some of that extra yellow color, right? So we're going to just hold back a little bit on the water, okay? And we're just going to mix this really easily and fast. And we do need more of that water, I can already see. So the hot water, and ultimately you want to just mix this up so it all comes together. And you can read the directions on the back of the Bob's. Any time you buy masa harina, it's going to come with a recipe. But the standard, like I said, it's 2 cups normally. I'm using 1 just to make things in half. And then a little bit of salt, but we're not using salt today. And then water, right? And hot water. And you just want to bring it together like this. And I have a little bit of water still in the cup. And again, depending on where you live, right? I live in a very, very dry climate. So often when something says, 1 cup of water for the rice, I maybe need a little more water. So you really have to really kind of have a sense that it's sticky, right? But not too sticky, right? And it's not sticking to my hand. It's all come together like this. And ultimately, if we had time, we would cover this with like a little towel and let it sit for a very few minutes, maybe 20 minutes or so. Okay, but we don't have that kind of luxury time because we're trying to finish on time and we have to get every single thing plated. So let's move this. We are in the moving stage here, and I'm going to move this here. We're going to figure all these things out. Just a minute. And we're going to put this Calabacitas here so you can look at it in its beautiful form, right? And we're going to chop some cilantro to go on that eventually. We're going to turn this burner up. We want to have a very hot pan for the tortillas, okay? And then the way that you do this is ideally with a tortilla press. Now, if you don't have a tortilla press, again, like the Mexican oregano, if you're into making these kind of things, it's an investment, okay? And you say, I really want to have that because I eat a lot of tortillas. And I encourage you all to look at the tortillas you're buying in the store and see what's actually in them. Because there's a lot of oil, a lot of salt, and a lot of product that they use in those tortillas to shelf stabilize them. So this is the most natural way, is just to make them yourself. And it's not so hard. So if you don't have a tortilla press, and of course, if you know, the Mexican women just flatten them between their hands because they're so good at it and they do that all the time. But the press is really helpful. You could use a rolling pin. You could use the back of a pan, right? So you would take a ball, kind of like the size of a golf ball. And what you would do if you didn't have a tortilla press is you could take a wine bottle, a rolling pin. You could take the back of a skillet and just smash it down, okay? So, but I have a Ziploc bag here that I cut open on 3 sides, right? And this, you're going to see why this is perfect, because you don't want to put the corn right onto the press. And then you're just literally going to press like this. And here is your tortilla. Voila, like this, okay? This is your tortilla. And then it's going to go into your very hot pan, which is not very hot yet, but I'm going to put that down. And we're just going to make another one. And then we're going to start plating all of our food. I'm going to move some of these other things and get them out of here. We have a tortilla bag. If you don't have a tortilla bag for the hot tortillas to go into, then you want to just put them between a towel or a napkin, but you want to take them out of their pan and then sandwich them in between a napkin. So I'm just, again, usually what I do is I divide all the balls all at one time, because that way if they're not quite even, I don't even make it round, because I don't bother making it like round like this, like you would a meatball, because it's just not necessary. It just gets smashed on its own. And you put it about 2/3 of the way back, not dead center, right? And then you press, and then voila, you have your tortilla. Okay, and then you cook this. The pan was not as hot as I ultimately wanted, but let's just see how we're doing here. You want it to be brown, and it's getting hot. It's cooking. It's cooking. So the next one will go in. So we're only going to make 2 right now because we have to get everything presented and pretty much wrapped up. But Wendy, before we start pulling everything together that we've made, is there any questions about any of the things that we've just done?
Yes, there are. They're related to one another. The first, and I'll put them both together, Carole, because they're both kind of the same. What's the difference between masa harina and cornmeal? And aware of the answer, can you actually use finely ground cornmeal as a replacement. So,
No. So
you and I have been through this before.
If you go back to my demo on May
Right.
17th, and I explain all this, and we're not going to go through the whole thing, but I want to tell you, there's cornmeal, there is polenta, there is corn flour, there is masa harina, and they are all different. They all come from the corn, but it's how it's processed, you know. Polenta comes in a rougher form, not ground as much, and can be coarse, or it can be medium, or it can be fine, kind of just like you find cracked bulgur wheat, right? You can find various grades. So polenta comes in many forms. Then there's the corn flour, which is a totally smooth kind of flour. Masa harina is much different because they actually put some lime in it, and it's just it's a different product, and you really truly need to have masa harina. There's no way around it. And cornmeal is more similar to a polenta, and cornmeal is something you would make cornbread with.
Beautiful. That's
my fast summation for you. I hope that is good, but just know that there's so many kinds.
Yes, exactly. And in general, the masa harina is also much more finely ground, and it's just traditionally made, as Carole was saying, with tortillas and cornmeal. I know Carole also has a phenomenal cornbread, which we have a recipe on, from in our back shows, but at some other time we might entice her to bring it out again. And
I love so much. I love so much just making cornbread, as you so well know.
Yeah.
And now my dog is barking. Let me just see what's going on.
Perfect. It's great having the dog at the end of the show, not in the middle. But wow, those tortillas look great.
I'm so sorry. I have a dogging bark. A barking dog, but she's suddenly someone drove by, and she just suddenly decided to have a barking fit. It's okay. Okay, just let me okay. So you can see that we're making these. I'm just like, and I make blue ones and gold ones. Okay, just 1 minute. It's okay. Wait.
We're going to be adding links in just a minute.
We're okay. We're okay.
Sorry, everyone. I was just
sorry, everyone. I had a guest come over, and the dog is barking for real because of a guest. So that happens. Sorry about all that. But we're going to start to play everything, and we're going to wrap things up. So it's good you have a dog to make noise when guests come, right? I'm not used to it.
Absolutely. And Carole, while you're doing that, I'm just going to answer a quick question, which is, you can find our past shows on the Plant Powered Metro New York YouTube channel, and everything has been there from the start of COVID. We started going online actually a little bit more frequently right at the beginning of COVID, and now some of you are asking about the next show. We're pretty much on once a month. And you can always find our events on the Plant Powered Metro New York website. But I did announce in the chat we will be next with Carole on July 31st. But in the meantime, I know you're proceeding with the tortillas, so we'll stay hooked on you. And we are putting in the chat a number of upcoming events.
And were there any other questions, or are we done with questions?
We are. Honestly, Carole, it's all been so captivating and so colorful and looks so delicious that we've gone through the main questions. They're
fantastic.
It looks amazing.
And you can see that I'm in production here. This can be done in 10 minutes, literally a 10-minute thing. But what we're going to do is we're not going to make all the tortillas. I just want to, I hope as you all were watching and listening to Wendy and my barking dog, that I was just kind of quickly, I let them get a little bit brown, and then I flip them over. So they need about 2 or 3 minutes on each side, and then you have your own fresh tortillas, and we're gonna just start to plate everything, and then we're done, and you can run through the final announcements, right? So these are going again into the little tortilla bag, and if you don't have a tortilla bag, you're going to use What are you going to use? You're going to use a towel or napkin, a cloth napkin. And you can see that I have my mind. I'm determined to just, so that I'm not doing this after class. I'm just determined. Now see, sometimes they're a little smaller. It just depends on your ball. I'm going to leave this one right on the counter. I try never to get too ahead. I like peeling them right off their plastic. Okay, so those are done, really. I made 1/2 recipe makes about eight. And the reason I usually make a half a recipe is because I usually make yellow ones and then I make blue ones so that I can serve yellow and blue tortillas. So we're going to get our soup now out. We're going to get our calabacitas, served it out of the pot. Let's get that out of the pot. We are going to get this out and put this into here. Looks beautiful. Remember, you can eat this with sweet potatoes or baked white potatoes. Today is Sunday, so I made a tray of sweet potatoes for several days, right? Sunday's my day of cooking for the week, because who has time to cook during the week? So, see, I just want to show you that you don't want to cook one sweet potato at a time. You want to cook a bunch. So if you have 5, these were really, really big ones. So you could serve sweet potato and calabacitas at the same time, right? And I have a mess going on here. And I have to flip this. I can tell that it's done. And it's getting brown. Good, perfect. And then we're going to serve our soup. I'm going to get a ladle. And we're just going to we're not going to bring the soup any far forward. We're just going to serve the soup. I don't even know. I hope it's hot. Let's just taste it to make sure that it's good. Delicious. Amazing. Amazingly delicious. Right? Okay, so that's our soup. And then we're going to bring the cutting board back. Our tortilla is done. This tortilla is done. It's going right into the bag. So it's a little hard, I just want you to know, but what happens in the bag or under the towel is that it starts to steam, and that's what makes it so so beautiful. We have been looking at the cilantro this entire class, and I'm just going to get some. We can put cilantro on our calabacitas, and I'm just going to sprinkle some of that on there on the top. Okay, that's that. Then what I like to do is, if you've washed your cilantro, you can actually eat the stems, okay? So you want to just finely chop them, right? Finely chop, and that is going to be part of our garnish. Let's put that. And we're going to chop a little other cilantro. And I'm going to get, I have some really pretty tomatoes. And I have some salsa verde, but let's just cut a tomato. And I'm just going to use this as decoration. And we have to put our crema on the top. Now you can put your crema over your calabacita, but today we're going to put our crema over our soup. And we're going to turn this, we can get this in. Let's get this off onto the platter. And then we're going to get our crema. And we're going to get a little spoon. Okay, so if it's runny enough and it's not too thick, what you can do is you can make a circle, right? And you can make a concentric circles by running it like that, okay? And you can serve it pretty just like that. Can everyone see that? I don't want to tilt it too much, but then you can also take a fork and just from the center pull everything out, right? Pull everything out, making like a pattern. This, I don't have much room here. Making like a really beautiful pattern. And then this will go on top of our thing, right here, this on top. And that will be like our garnish, right? And then we're gonna serve our tortillas. We can get this tortilla out of here. This one is done. Let's just get the tortilla bowl out of here. I'm gonna put this one in the pan in a second. We're just gonna, and I save all this. I use it 100 million times. And we're just going to get that. And then we have, I'm just going to take out a few that have been steaming. And you can see that we have our beautiful flappy tortillas, right? So then you would just, what would you do? You could, and would, you could just take this and put this in here. You could put sweet potato in here. You could put an avocado, sliced avocado, or you could just eat it just like this. Just like this. There's nothing better, nothing fresher. And we're done. Is it? Anybody else?
Congratulations. I mean, as usual, week or month after month, these recipes look phenomenal. The colors are phenomenal. For those of you who are joining us from the Jumpstart and are coming from a different diet tradition, please just notice the variety of texture and color from soup to corn to tortillas. I mean, this is all unbelievably delicious food. And again, many of the first questions you get when family are maybe wondering what you're doing is, what do you eat? And the variety you will find in this lifestyle is unbelievable. You have so much more choice, particularly of color, than the traditional beige diet that you find in the standard American diet. So enjoy experimenting, and hopefully Carole has made the way in, as she does every Sunday we're on, a little bit more accessible and easier. Carole, we do have a question for you before I jump into the announcements, which is, what do you do with all the food after your meal?
Well, today is Sunday and we're cooking Sunday, right? So I'm set for the week. I have a pot of soup. I have this. I have potatoes cooked. I have tortillas. I mean, this means I have lunch, I have dinner. Sometimes I've eaten the calabacitas for breakfast with a potato, and then I'm out, nothing like having vegetables in the morning. And I don't know, I certainly would like to have a friend. I like Wendy, we used to share meals all the time. And maybe my guest that just made the dog bark is going to be wanting to have a little bit of food with me, which would be nice. But we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Also, while I have your attention still here, Carole, and for everyone else, I flagged this in the chat, but please, our very strong suggestion and recommendation is, since this meal has a lot of corn in it, please do buy organic, non-GMO corn. So whether you get it at the farmer's market, ask the farmer whether or not it's loaded with pesticides or whether or not it's a GMO-free corn. Often they'll use heirloom seeds for the corn, which is what you want. Or on the bags, look for non-GMO frozen organic corn. The reason is that currently in the United States, actually for the number of years now, corn is one of those grains that has been genetically modified, particularly with glyphosate. And that can just cause havoc in our system. And, ironically, corn is probably the grain that has the most resistant starch in it. So it's actually really good for the colon, and it's really good for our epithelial cells. It creates butyrate, which is something that's good for our immune systems. So corn is actually surprisingly healthy, and you just have to make sure you get it organic, because you don't want to add all the chemicals from the GMO processing. So that's just a tip. And we're going to jump into announcements. So we have some incredibly fun stuff. Carole, thank you. You can obviously feel to stay around to say goodbye. But into the announcements, as mentioned, we are welcoming and hope the people from the Jumpstart have had a good time on the show. We'll be back July 31st at 5 o'clock. We are announcing a new series. I highly recommend this. It's called Heart to Healthy Heart. It's plant-based conversations that can save your life. And it will be a monthly series with cardiologists, plant-based cardiologists. Many of you know that this way of life is particularly indicated, that's the word, particularly indicated for people who've got heart disease as well as diabetes, and often it's useful for people in remission or turning around cancer, but for the most part, it's highly indicated for heart disease. And these will be monthly conversations. Our first event is with Dr. Robert Ostfeld. It's on June 22nd from 7 to 7:30. It's just a half an hour, and you can sign up on our Plant-Based Metro New York website, plantbasedmetronewyork.org. We also have 2 in-person farmers market tours and a special virtuous and virtual event coming up in June. So Saturday, June 19th from 11 till noon, in-person farmers market tour at the Union Square Green Market. And Saturday, 26th, also at 11 till noon, an in-person farmers market tour at the Grand Army Plaza Green Market in Brooklyn. And slightly earlier in the month, we have an event called Amping Up Gay Men's Health and Sexual Performance Through Lifestyle. Truthfully, this is probably good for all men, but we are giving a special focus to some of the concerns in the gay men's community. And all of this you can find on our events page. We often have potlucks and meetups. At this point, still virtual because of COVID, but that will probably be changing very soon. And please find us up there. So a really warm thank you to our co-host and our producer who's working right alongside me, but behind the scenes, Jim Spellos, who's remarkable. And also a thank you to Alan Smithy for all of his help before the show with Carole. And this month, Carole is appearing in the June issue of Health Science magazine, which is published by the National Health Association. So you can go to www.healthscience.org, and you will see a spread of her recipes for Health Science magazine. This is just fantastic, the recognition she's getting. So again, all the links to register are on our Plant Powered Metro New York website. Carole can be reached at Carole with an E, Carole at thevegievanguard.com, and you can find her food pictures on Instagram. It's at the Veggie Vanguard. And finally, do consider a donation to PPMNY so we can continue doing our best work in communities, which is where we do many of our presentations and shows. And all of this, of course, is coming to you free. So if you'd like, please make a donation. And I think that's it for the show. Carole, any last minute goodbyes?
No, I think we're good, and we're gonna see you at the end of July for our next Someday demo. And just don't forget about the farmers market. And I think we're good. I think we've done it all.
Excellent. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful presentation, as always. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming. We'll look forward to seeing you in a month. And enjoy your cooking. Enjoy the food. This is just a bountiful time of year, so enjoy it all.
Thank you for coming, everyone.